Turbo. Hello, my name is Chris, and today I'll be teaching you how to use timers in Turbo. Timers can be used for cooldowns, countdowns, and even time-based events. Let's step into learning this skill. To follow along on this video, you're going to want to have Turbo already installed on your computer. We have resources for Mac and Windows should you need it. You'll also want to have your document structured based on the Rust SDK/getting started. I use a similar structure, but with some of the fluff cut out. To start off, we need to set up some fields within our game state. Those fields we are setting up are going to be timer, which will be a struct. We'll also set up a bool called time up. Timer will use its new function. Time up, we'll just set it to false. Jump into step 2, which is going to be setting up a struct for timer. The struct for timer is going to have two fields. It's going to have start tick and duration ticks. Both fields are going to be a U size. But before I step in the Impl, this is the code I was talking about. The derive, Borscht deserialize, Borscht serialize, bug, clone, partial EQ. You need this if you're going to implement a struct outside of init, because init takes care of all of this by itself. You can do either or, it's up to you, but I just wanted to go and say that real quick in case you're trying to follow along. It's not working for you, you need this. The Impl has 4 functions inside of it. So we have a function new, which is going to start a new timer. We have a function is done, which is going to check if the timer is done. We have a function get time left, which is going to allow us to display the timer on the screen. And then we have a function reset, which is going to reset the timer. I'll go over what these functions are doing in more detail during the recap, but I wanted to talk about how they are able to operate, and that's by using the turbo tick function, which you can see right here. A tick is what it's called when the game loop updates itself. Turbo updates its go loop 60 times in 1 second, just about. Without tick, we'd have to manually create our timer by adding in our own field and using more math, but tick makes it really simple for us, so we're going to be taking advantage of that. Step 3 is going to be adding in a custom function. Mine's just going to change the background color based on our bool time up, so I'll add that in right here. It's just called change color. Finally, we're just going to throw all of this into the go loop. Let's save this. All right. Let's recap on what is going on here. Step 1 was to set up our 2 fields here. So we have timer, which is a struct, and we have time up, which is a bool. We initialize those 2 fields with timer using its new function and time up being set to false. Step 2 was to set up our struct and our Impl here. So we have our struct with start tick and duration ticks, both in a use size. We have our Impl for timer, which holds our function new, function is done, function get time left, and function reset. Let's talk a little bit about these functions now. Function new creates a new timer by getting the start tick, and that timer will last the amount of seconds that we specify, which will be multiplied by the frames per second, so the seconds is converted to ticks, and then the timer will run for the amount of ticks. And I might have completely lost you there, so let me kind of show you what's going on here. So up here, I'm making the new timer in init. The new timer is lasting 1 second, and the frames per second is going to be 60. If the timer is going to last 1 second, it needs to last 60 ticks. So 1 times 60 is 60 ticks. So this new function right here is doing that math for us. So it's taking the duration seconds, which we specify, and then it's going to multiply it by the frames per second, which we specify. The duration seconds is right here, and the FPS is right there. So let's use another example here if you're not following along. Let's say it's 5 seconds. We want the timer to be 5 seconds. Then we would have set 5 here, and FPS would still be 60, and it would be 5 times 60, and the loop would last 300 ticks. The way I think of it is, so this is so Turbo can understand what you're talking about, and this one down here is so we can understand what is happening, because we don't speak in ticks, we speak in seconds, so it's a little bit different. Function is done checks if the timer's done. It says, hey, what's the tick? And is it greater than the start tick plus the duration ticks? If it is, then the timer's done. Now, get time left is how we're displaying this right here on the screen. So we're saying let frames left be the duration ticks minus the start tick. So whatever's left there is going to be displayed in ticks as an F32, but then we're going to divide it by 60, which is the FPS. And because we're dividing it, it's going to take ticks and turn it into seconds. And then reset is really simple. It's just getting a new start tick. So it's resetting. Step 3 was adding our custom function. Mine was just changing the background color to use the clear function right here. Like I'm using the clear function to change the background. And then I'm taking the time up bool that I set and I'm turning it false. So if it's true, it's going to change it to false. I use an else statement here. So if it is false, I'm changing it back to true. So that's why you see the colors going back and forth here. Ultimately, I'm just trying to showcase what a timer can do. When it runs out, we can have a reaction and it can keep going forever and ever. The final step was to add everything into our go loop here. So I have everything into my go loop where we have the game state being loaded. We're checking if the timer is done, and if it is done, we're going to change the color and reset the timer. And then I added this right here, which is if I hit the B button, it's going to make a larger timer. So I also wanted to showcase that if you're making a game and doing stuff, that you can have input reaction as well as time-based reaction. This right here is letting the time left equal the state.timer.getTime, and we're using that variable right here to display in a text what our time left is. So that's the thing in the middle of the screen there. And then we save our state. Now that you have an understanding of how to set up a timer in Turbo, I challenge you to use this in your own game dev works. If you don't know where to start, you can start simple by just changing the color in the change color command to something else. Make it black, make it white, and you can just build on from there. I can show you an example in my game where I use the timer to facilitate my combat loop, which without the timer, combat would just be instant and it would feel kind of quick. You could just mash the A button and just get through it immediately, and that's not really what I want to have happen. Let me pull up my project real quick here. So for any of you guys that have watched one of these turbo tools before, I usually use my project as an example. Keep an eye on the terminal down here. This is where I do a lot of the time related stuff. I don't print it in the game. So I'm going to use heat ray here, and it doesn't go off immediately. There's a timer and then it goes off, and now the enemy has a timer and then they do damage back to me, and that's how I'm using timers in my game. It's a part of my combat loop. Even if I use a different skill here, it still waits a second, attacks, waits 3 seconds, attacks back, and then now I can do my turn again. Using the timer to lock the controls as well. You can't move during this. So all of this is part of using timers. I use mine in a combat loop. I want you to come up with ideas for timer and share it in our Discord. That's what I have for you today. Thanks for watching. Make sure to comment below on what type of tutorials you'd like to see in the future and whatever questions you might have. It took me so long to understand timers and really what's going on here, so you might not get it at first, but if you keep going at it, you will get it and you will make games fast. Join our Discord. Get involved with our community. We want to see what you're working on. We want to help you with it. And also, check out the Turbo merch store, guys. I got this awesome Turbo sweatshirt. I'm wearing the Turbo sweatpants right now. I have a Turbo shirt on beneath it. You probably can't see it because the logo is all the way down there, but this stuff is really high quality and it goes hard. Turbo.